Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. The second guest of the night is somebody that is one of the hosts of the Benny and the Bets podcast. It's a Red Sox podcast. Big Red Sox fan. Terry Cushman, how are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm good, just sitting here. I'm actually watching some hockey right now because I'm bored. Alright, so the biggest story in sports in 2020, other than the death of Kobe Bryant, is the penalties handed down to the Houston Astros for their cheating scandal. What did you make of the penalties that they were given to them?
I thought the penalties for Hinch and Luna were appropriate. I think they should have probably at this point, and I kind of have the benefit of hindsight at this point, but they probably should have taken the World Series away from them.
Yeah, I agree with you about that. They absolutely, I think, should have. So it's, 2 draft picks. Obviously, the manager got suspended and they fired him. And then, what do you make of, all these other superstars around the league that are not Astros players, commenting on the scandal? Like Cody Bellinger said, Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres spoke about it. And then a couple of the Ace guys spoke about it as well.
I think they're absolutely entitled to express their emotions, their thoughts. I think it's healthy, for the sport, for these athletes to take a stand. And it gives me a little bit of peace of mind as a fan that they, won't repeat it on their own respective teams. So I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either. I think that Cody Bellinger, what he said was very strong about how they took a World Series from us and Altuve robbed Judge of an MVP. And I thought that he had the best line of the players that commented. Vegas set out a prop, 83.5 hit by pitches over under for the Astros this season. I would bet on the over.
Did you say 33.5?
83.5.
83.5, they'll get hit by a pitch. I'd take the under on that one.
Wow. I know there's a couple people that would take the under, but I like the over. I feel like, especially early in the season, you're going to be seeing it a lot, especially from, their rivals in the division, I feel like. And the Yankees, when they come to town in May, I think you'll see a lot of that. And maybe some other teams that they've faced in the playoffs in the past, like the Rays and the Indians. And I could totally see, if they play the Reds this year, I could totally see Trevor Bauer plunking them, right? I don't even know if they play them. Oh, no, they don't, because I know our division, they at least plays the NL Central this year, so they don't play the Reds this year. That's too bad.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So they won't, they'd have to play in the World Series. But here's another thing to consider. If it's 83.5, you got to figure, at some point before that, there would be a serious injury. Somebody would break a wrist or, get hurt somehow. And I think the commissioner would probably take a stand.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that the commissioner might have to take a stand. And then he actually did say that players will be punished for hitting Astros. Did you see that?
He did say that they would be punished?
Yeah, he did say that they'd be punished. I'm interested to see who's the first candidate for that. I think they played the Athletics early in the season. I could totally see Mike Fiers getting after them or somebody like that. And it's funny because Mike Fiers is the one that spilled the beans about the cheating in the first place. I didn't imagine if it was Mike Fiers to be the first pitcher to intentionally hit an Astro in 2020.
Well, the interesting thing about that was he's the one who broke Giancarlo Stanton's jaw back when Stanton was still a Marlin.
That's right.
So, a little bit of history there, and but not that he would target, a Yankee, but he's got a history of hitting people.
Yeah, he does have a history of hitting people for sure. You mentioned before we started recording that the Red Sox penalties are supposed to be handed down either early next week or at the end of this week. What do you think that the penalties will be, and what do you think they should be?
I think worst case, they could probably lose draft picks. But here's the thing. When the Astros were being investigated, we had seen everything that John Boy put out, all the presentations. We could hear the trash can banging. We knew exactly what went on. With the Red Sox, we don't know anything right now. It's all been kept close to the vest. We don't know what the commissioner has. And it's anyone's guess as to what could happen. But the investigation was supposed to wrap up last week or the week before, and then it keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah, it does keep getting pushed back.
Yeah, so I think they found something, and my expectation is they could potentially, lose picks.
Yeah, I agree with you. They'll lose some picks, and I think that Cora, even though the Red Sox fired him, will get some sort of suspension because obviously he was involved in both that and the Astros one as well. How come does Carlos Beltran not get any punishment from the league? Because all this stuff recently has been like he was the ringleader in all of this, and obviously the Mets fired him, and rightfully so. Why don't you think that he's gotten in trouble for this?
Because he was a player at the time, and I think he would have union protection, and that would just kind of complicate any type of punishment the commissioner wants to implement. What could happen is maybe Cora's, it's already expected that his will be a multi-year suspension. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a lifetime ban. I really wouldn't. Yeah, and what the commissioner can do is he can leverage, an insane suspension on Cora to kind of put the fear in all other coaches, managers, front office staff, and make an example out of him, because he's had plenty of time to think about what to do with Cora at this point. And I can almost guarantee you whatever he's leaning toward now was probably a lot different from, a month or so ago.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested to see what the penalties are, and especially what Cora gets. Replacing Cora as the Red Sox manager is Ron Roenicke, the former Milwaukee Brewers manager. What did you make of that replacement pick for that hire, or did you think they were going to go with somebody else? Because I certainly thought they'd go elsewhere with this managerial choice.
I'm a big fan of Roenicke, and, he did have an impressive stint with the Brewers, got them within 2 games of the World Series. And, I just thought he was the safe pick. He already has relationships with the players. And if you look at what Dusty Baker got with the Astros, just a 1-year deal with an option. And I figured the Red Sox would take a similar approach with Roenicke and just kind of try him out this year. If the team overperforms, maybe he'll get a 2 or 3 year extension. If they can sense, communication issues, maybe there's a disconnect, then they could move on from him at the end of the year. So they still technically have the interim tag on him, and they said it's with respect to the investigation. So I think we'll get more details in a week or two about, what his actual contract is. But I liked it, and they were kind of put in this position, pretty late in the winter, so they didn't really have time to do an organized search. I know they interviewed John Gibbons, they interviewed the bench coach for the Diamondbacks. I forget his first name. His last name is Ureta. Colombian guy, managed the Colombian WBC team in 2017. And there might have been one or two others, but I like the Renicky pick.
Yeah, I don't mind that hire either. Renicky had success with the Brewers. I thought that he didn't deserve his firing from Milwaukee, but Craig Counsell's done a nice job there as well. So I don't think that's a bad hire. Certainly it would have been a better choice than John Gibbons. I think that John Gibbons is somebody that underachieved with the Blue Jays a couple times, even though he got them to the ALCS twice. So he has some success, but I like Renicky better. And obviously the Diamondbacks bench coach works under Torey Lovullo, who was John Farrell's bench coach with Boston. So there's random ties there with Lovullo and the Red Sox to the Diamondbacks bench coach. I just realized that. Let's talk about the offseason a little bit that really is overshadowed because of all this Astros cheating scandal stuff. What did you think was the best move of the offseason by any team?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It might have been the Dodgers trade, really, because they got Mookie, so that's going to boost their outfield. Him and Bellinger are going to be in the outfield. David Price has a 2.25 ERA in Dodger Stadium. I think he's a good bounce-back candidate. And if this Gratterall kid that they ended up keeping from the Twins ends up being a dominant reliever, he's got a sinker that's like 102 miles an hour. If he ends up panning out, that trade will have been a massive success.
Yeah, but let's face it, the Dodgers have to at least make the World Series or perhaps win it because they're in Los Angeles and Mookie's in a contract year. It's not a guarantee that he's going to re-sign with the Dodgers even though they have all the money in the world. I think so much pressure is on the Dodgers to win this season for sure. And I think that was a great trade for the Dodgers as well. And I agree with you about David Price being a prime bounce-back candidate. I think he's going to have a better season than both Kenta Maeda and Heijin Ryu because Ryu's on the Blue Jays now. I thought that was a bad signing because I think Ryu is better built for the National League. And Kenta Maeda I don't think is going to be great on the Twins for the same reason. I don't know how these two guys are going to do in the American League. So I'm very fascinated to see how those two acquisitions play out for Toronto and Minnesota. Meanwhile, I think David Price in Dodger Stadium is going to do him wonders. And I actually think that his contract might look a little better, even though his contract isn't good. But I do think pitching in Dodger Stadium will help him. What do you think was the worst move of the offseason?
I didn't like the Angels signing Anthony Rendon. I just think they needed pitching in the worst way. There was plenty of pitching out there. They didn't pursue any of the top targets. They got Dylan Bundy from the Orioles, who's kind of a failed, you can't really even call him a prospect. He's had one good year, very dismal aside from that. They made one other pitching acquisition that escapes me, but I think that that's a team that, should have allocated, its money elsewhere, and I don't see them making the playoffs anytime soon, even with Rendon and Trout.
I totally agree with you. I think that they should have addressed their pitching. Rendon will help them offensively, obviously, and we good protection for Mike Trout. But I really think that they should have went on the pitching route too. Like Corey Kluber would have been a fine addition for them, even though I don't love the fit with him in Texas. I think he would have been much better off in Anaheim. That's a trade I really didn't love for the Rangers. I think the Indians got some good stuff back for Kluber. They're one of the more interesting teams for me this year in the league because it could go either way, and Lindor's obviously somebody on the trade block. I'm very fascinated for the Indians. They have a lot of depth. Division stinks, so they can conceivably win the division because obviously the two bad teams, the Tigers and the Royals and whatnot. What do you make of the Indians offseason?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised they didn't move Lindor, but he does have a couple of years left. They can move him at the deadline. I was listening to an Indians podcast, and they think that Antonetti kind of opened the door to maybe possibly signing him after all, and they got the sense that Lindor loves it in Cleveland and would love to stay. So I don't know how much momentum is behind that, but if you asked me at the start of the winter, I would have guessed that he was going to get moved. But I'm also glad they didn't decide to trade Mike Clevenger, because he's got top of the rotation stuff. He's a number one or a number two on most teams, had a sub-3 ERA, and he's got 3 years of control left. That's why it was insane to me that they were willing to move him, and the fact that they've kept him. He just did have an injury of some sorts, so he will miss the, maybe the first few weeks of the season. But, yeah, and I'm trying to think, did they do anything in their lineup?
I feel like they did make an acquisition. I know they got DeShields from Texas in the Kluber deal. I think he'll help them, especially defensively in the outfield. But I feel like they did make a move.
They got a reliever in that deal as well that a lot of insiders were pretty high on. Yeah, I'm pulling up their depth chart right now, so that'll tell me. But I think, honestly, I haven't really tweeted it out yet, but I'm picking them to win the Central. I think the Twins are going to have a bit of a step back. I'm not thrilled, like you said, with the Maeda acquisition. They picked up Rich Hill, Homer Bailey. Hill, I think, is in his 40s at this point, has a blister issue, and Bailey is just a complete wild card. So I'm not in love with the Twins, and I know the White Sox signed Keuchel, made one or two other moves as well, and they're going to be better. I think they'll finally get above 500, but I don't think they'll quite win 90, to take the division. And so I'm definitely taking the Indians, to win that one. Yeah, it doesn't look like they did do anything really. They've got Mercado in the outfield, who kind of emerged last year, and they got Franmil Reyes from the Padres.
That's right.
In that deal. Yeah, so I think they're pretty good. Oh, they got Sandy Leone, and that's curious because he worked so well with the Red Sox pitching staff. So it's interesting to see how he fits in with that Cleveland rotation.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he would fit in there, too. I forgot about the Franmil Reyes ad. He came in the deadline last year in the Bauer deal. He, I think, will have a big year with the Indians. I think it's Indians, Twins, or White Sox in that division. I'm down on the Twins, too, but to me, just I need to see who makes it out of spring training healthy. Injuries are already happening in spring training, and the Yankees are obviously the forefront of it. It was announced today that Luis Severino had some issue in his elbow, so they're shutting him down. I think he's going to miss the start of the season. Obviously, James Paxton's missing the start of the season as well, coming off that surgery. And then Aaron Judge has a shoulder problem. This feels like last year all over again. Meanwhile, the Yankees did finish with the second-best record in the American League last year and won the division going away, won over 100 games. So, rough start to spring training for my beloved New York Yankees. What do you make of all the Yankee spring training injuries so far?
If they can be as resilient as they was last year and just forge ahead despite all the injuries, more power to them. But I would be really concerned about Luis Severino at this point, and if he can really be a durable pitcher that can give you 6 or 7 strong months. And he fell apart late in the 2017 season. He wasn't injured, but, he started getting knocked around and, and similar in 2018, just, not not overly, or maybe I was thinking of 2018 actually.
2018 was the season where he fell apart and got off to the good start.
Yeah, because he and Chris Sale were looking like they were going to go head-to-head for a Cy Young, and then Kluber swept in. And then, of course, last year he just never got going with the shoulder, until the postseason. But that's a huge concern. If Judge spends a big part of the year on the DL, you have to wonder what type of durability he's going to have, being 6 feet 7 inches tall, nearly 300 pounds throughout his 30s. So there's a lot of uncertainty there as well. So we'll see. And I'm not a Stanton person. I don't know how you feel about him, but I think that was a terrible, pickup for you guys. And we lucked out because I think Dombrowski wanted him, but we were on the no trade list and it never materialized. But that could be a very ugly contract. So we'll see what happens. But you're looking at Severino possibly on the injured list. Paxton's going to start the year. That gives you what? Cole, Tanaka, Happ, and then a couple of openers. Or maybe
Jordan
you pull like a Matt.
And then I think they'll go with the opener ones. Chad Green. Chad Green thrived in the opener last year, and then he got exposed a little bit in the playoffs. But then again, the Astros were cheating in the playoffs last year, so
True.
I always say that to people.
I don't believe in the buzzer thing, though. I can't. There's just too many. There's too many things that steer me away from it. Like how come they lost every home game in the World Series? How come Tanaka shut them completely down in Game 1? They didn't score a single run in Game 1 of the ALCS. Paxton held them to 1 run in Game 5. And it's a tough sell. I mean, the trash can thing definitely happened. They might have had a couple of other minor tricks up their sleeve that we don't know about, but I haven't been huge on the buzzer thing. And, but we'll see. I mean, if a smoking gun type thing finally comes out, then I'll change my mind.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the buzzer thing because when Altuve, after he hit the walk-off off of Chapman, the camera clearly shows him saying, like, don't rip off my jersey. That, to me, is suspicious.
Yeah, it does. It didn't look good. And, he's given a couple of excuses. One, an ugly tattoo. Another one, he didn't want his wife was upset about it or something. And, but another thing that gets misconstrued is that he didn't run straight into the clubhouse after he tapped home plate. He was actually on the field, and I timed it. He was on the field for 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and he embraced several teammates, then goes down into the dugout and then the clubhouse to change. So, it's just another thing. And believe me, I'm open-minded. I mean, I don't have any emotional investments in it one way or the other. But it would be tough for me. If I was sitting on a jury, I would have to say not guilty based on what I've seen so far.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very fascinating. I wonder if more will come out on the buzzers or whatnot. And, yeah, I'm kind of mixed on the buzzers. I have my conspiracy theories, and then there's the case against the buzzers as well. We actually got this buzzer conversation because we were talking about the Yankees and how Chad Green got exposed against the Astros in that Game 6. They started him in the opener, and then Gurriel, who's in that slump in that series, hits the big home run, and that to me is suspicious. And plus, there was an Astros home game, and like I said, Gurriel was in that slump, and then he goes and hits a home run, and then obviously the Yankees come back and tie it, and then we all know what happened at the end with Chapman and Altuve. What are your thoughts on the Red Sox return in the Mookie Betts deal? I think you guys did better in this return than you would have if the deal with Gatorall coming to you guys happened.
Yeah, Graterol had, he's had Tommy John. He had a shoulder impingement last year. Apparently, he was 40 pounds heavier coming into camp than when the season ended. So those are all cause for concerns. I like what I see with Jeter Downs. He only had 12 games at the end of last season in Double-A. He hit 5 bombs in those 12 games. So that's all encouraging. He does project to be an above-average player, once he does turn professional. But I would have loved that, a pitching prospect like Tony Gonsolin or Josiah Gray, because that's really where we need the help. We will have Tanner Houck come up this year. Brian Mata is looking more like 2021, and we could possibly get Cal Quantrill from the Padres if we also take Will Myers. But going back to the Dodger trade, I'm content with it, but I would have loved a pitching prospect instead.
Yeah, if you guys traded him to the Padres and got Cal Quantrill, that would have been a nice return for you guys. And I think Will Myers would have been a good fit for you guys too, playing in Fenway Park and possibly going over the monster in terms of power. I think he would have been a nice fit, and then you could slide him in at anywhere really in the outfield or DH if you're spelling days off for JD Martinez. So I think that would have been a fine acquisition. By the way, I think Alex Verdugo is going to be a breakout player for you.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty excited about him, too. I think he's got a similar ceiling as Benintendi, on a good year. And, so I'm kind of curious to see how he plays. A very unenviable position. He's the guy that's going to replace Mookie Betts. And, so that's interesting. Let me just say this, though, just to reiterate. The Red Sox are talking to the Padres right now about Will Myers and a pitching prospect. So something could happen within the next day or two, possibly.
Oh, I thought that was a possible package for Betts, because they were talking about that as a Betts package as well.
Yeah, that got a little bit more steam before the Dodgers won, but apparently, for whatever reason, the Padres are still motivated to move Myers. And the interesting thing about Myers is, even though we're taking on $30 million, the way the contract's structured and then the deferred payments, it's only going to be $3.8 million against the luxury tax. So, I mean, that's a steal to me. I mean, even if he is disappointing, I feel like you could platoon him at the very worst at first base with Mitch Moreland and still get decent production there. And Quantrill kind of intrigues me. On paper, he was a rookie last year. He did have a 5.16 ERA, but in 3 consecutive starts late in the season, August into September, he gave up 8 earned runs 3 games in a row. So that kind of blew up his ERA when he was having a fairly solid season, before that rough patch. So
yeah,
I'm kind of curious to see what they can do. And we get a new pitching coach now, Dave Bush. I know you guys also have, is it Matt Blake with the Yankees?
Yep, he came over from Cleveland.
Yeah, and so I don't know anything about, Bush or even Blake, but, I'm interested to see what they do, respectively.
Yeah, me too. I'm very interested to see the new pitching coaches. I'm very intrigued for Matt Blake. Just coming from the Indians, who have a good pitching staff, that's what intrigues me the most about Matt Blake, and I'm interested to see what he could do with Garrett Cole as well. Most likely to be traded this calendar year, Nolan Arenado, Chris Bryant, or Francisco Lindor?
Well, I think Lindor will definitely be the toughest one, so I'll kind of rule him out right now. I want to say Arenado is the most likely to be moved because everybody knows he's unhappy. He hasn't had a single conversation with his general manager. There's just been this awkward silence, and I just feel like they're going to want to get rid of the elephant in the room and make a deal with someone. But also with Bryant, it just depends on how little the Cubs are willing to accept back in the trade. If they don't command this huge haul, then maybe it could be Bryant. But I think Lindor is the toughest, and I'll say Arenado.
I think Arenado's most likely to move as well. I think that he could fetch a nice haul back for Colorado. The Braves are interested. It'd be weird if the Cubs acquired him because you heard them linked to him. Would they move Bryant in a deal for Arenado? I would say so, right?
Well, the upside to it for the Cubs is Arenado already has his contract, so it's cost controlled. I guess they would probably want clarification on the opt-out. And besides from that, I mean, I could see that being attractive for the Cubs. Now, with the Rockies, I don't know how much value there really is in a Bryant type guy that only has 2 years left, because I don't think they're going to be competitive for at least the next 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. I think they're looking at a small rebuild anyway. So I'm not really sure what Bryant does for them.
Yeah, and the Cubs are interesting too. It's funny because 4 years ago they were the best team in the league, and then they ended up winning the World Series, and now it looks like their window is shut pretty much, and their pitching staff's old. Bryant wants out. Rizzo's getting up there in age. Baez is still good. He's their best player right now. But yeah, I'm interested to see the Cubs with former Red Sox and former Cub, obviously, David Ross at the helm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that division's this week as a whole. I feel like the only division that I think is pretty good is the NL East.
That's an excellent
from a depth standpoint.
I mean, you could make the case for 4 of those teams to win the division, and the Marlins are still a year or 2 out. But let me say this: I don't know if this has crossed your mind yet, but I'm wondering if Mookie Betts might be the first big Derek Jeter move.
Oh,
They won't compete next year, but if they think they're within 2 or 3 years of doing it, maybe he makes that splash, and kind of maybe tries to fire up that Marlins fan base that just isn't really, one of the stronger ones in the sport. But the Marlins are definitely out of it, and I'm gonna say that the Nationals will probably have that hangover that most teams get. And I'll pick the Phillies to win that division.
Ooh, with interesting.
Yeah, I think the Girardi effect kind of plays. I think Jake Arrieta, if he's healthy, he's going to have a nice little bounce back. Aaron Nola could, be a Cy Young contender. They're going to need a Nick Pivetta guy to step up, and Zach Wheeler, I almost forgot about him. So
yeah, that's a big add for them.
Pretty solid rotation there, and I think they're pretty well balanced. They might need a reliever, actually, but I think they can address things. Yeah. But that's a very deep division. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I don't know who I'd pick. I'm leaning either Braves, Nats, or, dare I say it, the Mets. Although I might consider Philadelphia if there's some injuries on other teams and if there's things I talk myself into and whatnot, Girardi, that whole thing. But yeah, any of those 4 teams can win that division in my opinion. I think the Central's open. The NL West, it's Dodgers. AL East, it's Yankees. Although the Rays are pretty good too. I just think that they're a notch below the Yankees. Or maybe 2 notches below the Yankees if their offense isn't better. Although with the Yankee pitching injuries, that might even it out. Maybe it's 1 notch above. AL Central, we talked about those 3 teams. And then the AL West, I really think that Oakland can give Houston a run for its money in that division. How do you feel about the Athletics?
They're going to have Sean Manaea back. And, Mike Fiers, I think, all eyes are going to be on him quite a bit because he's this new, celebrity or whatever you want to call him. But I think they got a pretty solid rotation, a very solid lineup. I don't know much about their bullpen off the top of my hand. I know Blake Trinan is no longer there, but I think Bob Melvin is one of the most underrated managers in Major League Baseball, and I could very well see them winning the AL West. And my big question mark with the Astros is, what's their bullpen look like? I know they still have Osuna, but they lost Harris. I think they lost another reliever. So that's kind of a weak spot. They don't have Garrett Cole anymore. I don't think Lance McCullers is really going to fill that void, completely. So, and Verlander and Greinke are getting up there. I'm willing to take them at face value and that they'll be solid, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm considering Oakland in that division, but let's see how spring training goes and who's healthy and whatnot. One last thing before we go, promote your podcast.
Well, like you said, it's the Benny and the Bets podcast. I'm literally getting chirped right this second on Twitter. Everybody's saying, well, you got to change the name. Mookie's not there anymore. I'm not changing the name. This was a great era, for Boston Red Sox baseball. It'll stand the test of time, and I'm going to keep the Benny and the Bets podcast name, just the way it's been since 2018. And, we get into it. I'm not a homer. I'm very tough on the team at times. Some of my co-hosts are as well. I got 2 different co-hosts on the early week show, a different set of co-hosts on the midweek show. I think, our numbers are going up and up every year. Some of the metrics I look at, we're holding our audience for at least 70% of the show, which I'm really thrilled about. And we have gotten into the 80s. And it's really coming together, and it's been a lot of fun to do, and I think a lot of Yankee fans will enjoy it. I listen to Yankee podcasts myself. I like to hear what the other side of it is, and it's going to be an interesting year for Red Sox baseball, whether they're competitive or not. So, and you can find us on any platform. We're available everywhere.
Yeah, you guys are available everywhere. I just haven't listened to you guys in a while. I have to take a tune-in to see what everybody else's reactions were to the Betts trade. And obviously when your punishment gets handed down, or the Red Sox punishment gets handed down, I'll take a listen too. So thanks for coming on tonight, and I'll have you on before the season so we can do some predictions.
Oh, awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun.
That's cool. Alrighty, I'll see you, or talk to you soon.
Yeah, have a good night.
All right.